We're going to have a look at some of the aspects that will affect our exhaust emissions from a diesel engine. And in particular here, we're going to be using a 5-gas analyzer connected to our mainline dyno. And this is going to be showing us the oxides of nitrogen, or NOx, levels in parts per million. And we're going to look at three aspects here. We're going to look at the exhaust gas recirculation. We'll see the effect of EGR on the NOx output. We'll also investigate the effect of our injection timing on NOx output. And lastly, we'll have a look at our injection pilot pulse, and we'll see what effect that has on our NOx. So let's get our engine up and running, and we'll have a look at our exhaust gas recirculation first. Before we actually make any changes to our exhaust gas recirculation tuning, let's just have a quick look through the MoTeC M130 worksheet for EGR, and we'll look at the main parameters that we need to understand and the ones we're going to be adjusting. First of all, here we have our main EGR engine charge aim table. So this is where we're defining essentially the percentage of EGR operation that we want. At the moment, you can see I've got a value of 2000 milligrams set in this table, and essentially that's disabling the system. We'll have a quick look at our time graph on the right, and we'll see the parameters that are useful or important for us to understand here. At the bottom, we have our current engine charge versus our engine charge estimate. The engine charge estimate is coming from our table that we've just looked at, and the engine charge essentially as a calculated parameter is based on the airflow into the engine. Above this, we have our actuator solenoid for our exhaust gas recirculation valve. So this is the solenoid that actually opens and closes the EGR valve. This is all done using vacuum. So at the moment we can see that this is sitting at 85%, which is the upper limit of the solenoid's duty cycle. Above this, we have our feedback from our exhaust gas recirculation position sensor. So this sensor tells us whether our EGR valve is open or closed. At the moment, you can see that essentially we're sitting at 0%. The EGR valve is completely closed. Now, with that out of the way, we're going to perform this test at a fixed point. We're going to maintain about 40 milligrams of fuel delivery and 1500 RPM, and we're running the car right now in 4th gear on our dyno. So we can see the cell that we're currently operating in highlighted here in our exhaust gas recirculation engine charge aim main table. Let's head across to the dyno and we'll have a look at what our current NOx output is. So we can see this is being demonstrated here on our time graph in green. At the bottom here we have our current NOx output, which we can see is sitting at the moment at 535 parts per million. So now we're going to make some changes to our exhaust gas recirculation. We're going to request the ECU opens that EGR valve so we can have a look at the effect on our emissions. So we can do that by going into our exhaust gas recirculation engine charge aim main table. Now I'm just going to highlight both the 40 milligram and 30 milligram cells there, as we are slightly interpolating. And what I'm going to do is just drop the target there down to 620 milligrams. Instantly in our time graph on the right, we're seeing the effect of that change. In particular, we can see our exhaust gas recirculation feedbacks. This is showing us the position of the exhaust gas recirculation. We can see that we're sitting now at about 80 to 85% opening. Let's head across to our dyno and we'll see the effect on our NOx emissions. Remember, we were sitting at about 534. There is a latency in our NOx output changing, but we can see that that's dropped dramatically. We're on from about 534 parts per million down to about 226 parts per million. It's important to mention at this point as well, we aren't actually closing the throttle body, which would help improve the effect of our EGR system, and that would help further reduce our NOx output. Let's head back into our laptop software and we'll just pause our time graph and we'll have a quick look at what actually happened when I made that change. So we can see this is the point right here where I've made that change to our engine charge estimate main table. We can see that that's dropped down to 680 milligrams. And what we can see is prior to that, our actual engine charge value was sitting at about 890 milligrams. Due to the closed loop nature of the EGR control, we can see our blue line there drops down onto our target. Now that's achieved by the solenoid duty cycle changing. We can see that in our next group of values here. We've got our exhaust gas recirculation actuator solenoid. We can see that we started with 85%. As soon as I've made that change, the ECU drives that solenoid initially down to 30%, and then once we actually reach our target, it stabilizes at around about 47%. Finally, we can see the effect of the solenoid on our actual EGR valve position. Prior to making the change, we can see our EGR valve essentially completely closed, sitting at about 3% there. We can see initially it opens completely, it goes up to 99.3%, and then as we get onto our target and the closed loop control takes place, we can see that the actuator, or so the EGR position, stabilizes at around about 80%. So of course, by adjusting our EGR position, we can affect the amount of exhaust gas recirculation going through the engine, and in turn this will affect our NOx output. Let's move on now and we'll have a look at the effect of our injection timing on the NOx output from the engine. Now for this test we have disabled the EGR again, so we've essentially got maximum NOx output. We aren't using any EGR to artificially reduce our NOx output. Let's have a look at our injection timing table, and again we're running at approximately 40 milligrams of fuel delivery at 1500 RPM, essentially the same cell that we were previously operating in, and you can see that our main injection event is beginning 5.3 degrees before top dead center. Let's head back across to our dyno and just confirm that our NOx output is essentially what we had before. We're sitting at about 533 parts per million. Of course, that is moving around slightly while I'm talking. Okay, so what we're going to do is make two changes here. The first change, back into our laptop software, we're going to advance the injection timing. We're going to go from 5.3 degrees up to 10 degrees. So we're now starting our injection event earlier. Let's head across to the dyno and we'll see the effect of advancing our injection timing, and we're seeing our NOx output increase now. We've gone from about 530 up to around about 800, 795 parts per million. So it's quite a large increase for that 5 degrees that we've advanced the timing. Now we'll head back into our laptop software. This time I'm going to retard the timing. So remember, we started at 5.3 degrees. We've now gone to 0 degrees. So we're now starting our injection event right at top dead center. Let's jump back into our dyno screen and we'll have a look at the effect of our NOx. So we were at around about 800 parts per million with our injection timing at 10 degrees before top dead center. Now with our injection timing at TDC, you can see that our NOx output has dropped to around about 430 parts per million. So quite a dramatic effect on our NOx output from advancing or retarding our injection timing. Of course, with our injection timing, we do also need to balance the engine torque output with our emissions, as the injection timing will affect both our NOx output and our engine torque. We're going to perform one more test now, and we're going to have a look at the effect of our pilot injection pulse on the NOx output. Now to begin this test, I've actually disabled our pilot injection event. So let's just jump back into the laptop software and we'll have a look at our pilot injection table. So this is the area that we're currently operating in here. We're only going to use one pilot injection event for this particular demonstration. So we can see that currently in the area that we're operating in, I've got our injection pulse set to deliver 0 fuel. So no injection event is occurring, no pilot injection event is occurring. Let's jump across to our dyno screen and we can see that in the current cell that we're operating in, our NOx output is sitting at around about 620 parts per million. Let's jump back into our laptop software, and what I'm going to do is set the entire area that we're operating in at the moment to 1 milligram. So we've now introduced our pilot injection event. Let's jump back across to the dyno screen and we'll see the effect of that pilot injection. Again, remembering that there is some latency with the 5-gas analyzer actually catching up. So we can see that we've dropped our NOx output from 620 initially down to about 550 parts per million. So that concludes our demonstration, and particularly if you do live in a part of the world where you do need to meet emission standards, it's going to be incredibly important for you to understand the implications of your tuning changes on the emissions from a diesel engine. That was just one of the modules taken out of our Diesel Tuning Fundamentals course. If you're interested in learning how to improve the performance of your diesel engine, then this course is perfect for you. You'll learn how the diesel engine operates and the key differences between the operation of diesel and gas engines. You'll see how the air-fuel ratio affects engine performance and how we can balance the boost pressure and the fuel delivery in order to make more power without risking damage to your engine. You'll learn how the fuel quantity, fuel pressure and injection timing interact and how they affect the operation of the engine. You'll learn why diesel engines produce that distinctive knocking sound and how pilot injection can be used to reduce it. You'll also learn about the emissions devices used in modern diesel engines and see how we can improve performance while remaining emissions legal. If you want to find out more, click the link in the description.